You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marni Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Naomi. The secrets I finally learned to find the love of my life in my 40s. Oh my gosh, ladies and listeners, I'm super excited for today's Life Check Yourself because you're going to be so super inspired. I am here to introduce you to Naomi. She is one of our amazing graduates from the 5 Keys to Becoming Irresistible program, and she lives in the Northeast, and she's a success story. Yay! She's engaged. She has a baby, and we are super happy to have her back with us to share her story and inspire you all to don't give up. So Naomi, first of all, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's so fun. I will always remember you in class because you were so engaged. You were so committed. You inspired other ladies in the class. Like, you were just really an amazing inspiration from the very beginning. So I really appreciate you kind of spreading the love and being here to share.
Well, thank you.
So, all right. So let's take people back. Was it 2017, 2018? When was it when I first met you?
Oh, goodness. That could be about right. Yeah, because I met Ken in 2019. Yeah, that could be right. 2017, 2018. Yep.
So it was like, I think it was 2018. And where were you in your life? What was the situation? How old were you ish? What was your dating story at the time?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think how old I was. I was either like 42 or 43. If I had to guess, I was 43. And it was, I was in a rough place. I had, in my mid to late 30s, had been in a long relationship that I thought was going to be it. It didn't work out. And then, in your early 40s, there you are, and you're like, wow, now what? And I really still wanted to have a family and kids. And I'm just like, how am I going to do this? I'm getting older. And so, I kept dating and just struggling. And I remember coming to you around the time that I reached a place where I remember there was some guy, who the hell knows what his name is at this point, who just really threw me for a loop and sent me into a tailspin that concerned me, right? That I somehow was like this upset over a man I dated for I don't know, a week and a half to 2 weeks. But it really threw my mental headspace. And I felt at that point like I really needed something to help me be in a better place, that I was able to handle all of the things that were coming at me, so that I was more, I think, selective. Because if I had been really aware of what it is I needed and what I was looking for, I wouldn't have even been interested in this guy. So I was like, why was I even that upset, right? He wasn't even like someone retrospect, hindsight's 2020, that I should have been that worried about. And then along the same time, I think I was doing this already when I met you. I had realized I was 43. I always wanted kids. And so I reached a place in my life where I said to myself, oh my God, if I don't consciously choose to have kids at this point in my life, the choice is going to make for me, right? Like there's just, at some point you just can't physically have kids. Even if you want to adopt, at some point you just can't, right? It's like they're going to cut you off.
Yeah.
And so I also around this time had decided, this was my time. And I was actually actively trying to get pregnant on my own as I was out there dating, and I started working with you.
Yeah, I remember. And I think you are so inspiring because there's so many who feel like, I have all these dreams and time is taking my dreams. And what I notice a lot of people doing is saying, well, I guess I'm not meant for that, or I guess and I should just settle for what I have, right? So how do you talk about that with people who might say, if it didn't happen, it didn't happen. Maybe I should just realize that it's not in the cards for me.
I think it depends on how badly you really want it, right? Like,
Mm.
is this something that you know is meant to be part of your life? And I knew I wanted both things, right? Like, I knew I really wanted to be a mom, and I knew I really wanted to be a partner, and I didn't want to give up on either. And the reason I finally chose to decide to try to get pregnant on my own, although I ended up adopting in the end, but the reason I decided at that point to try, even while I was still dating, was I said, you know what, the right man is going to love me for who I am. And if this is something that, they're okay with, then great. And if not, then at some point after the kid is, I don't know, 3, 4, whatever, I'll start dating again. But I really wanted to move forward with all my paths simultaneously and keep my head in the game for what I wanted in my life. And then I was going to just ride the waves as they came.
I really love that. And so that's an important thing just to highlight for those of you who are taking notes, is like when you realize that you're starting to sell yourself on the dream not being in the cards for you is the time to double down. Because that's what you did. You were like, you know what? It's not working. This last guy, like, I'm getting really upset because I'm so attached to the timeline or to it being the one that I'm starting to lose my grounding. And to get that support was just such a courageous move. So what was it that really drew you to us or led you to sort of feel like, maybe we could help you with this?
Yeah, well, I remember, I had certainly looked into, you go online, you can find a
Yeah.
million different types of dating coaches and this and
Yep.
that, and you can get advice all over the place. And the thing that drew me into this program was that I felt like it was really dealing with my stuff
Mm.
and not like, how do I be this person that men want? Or what do I do to make sure he likes me? Or all of these like, I don't know, catchphrases or do this and a man will like you, send this text, that man will like you. And when I saw what you had talked about and I read, what you had written and then all your podcasts and things, I got this vibe, and it really was what it ended up being, that it was going to be more about how can I be the person I need to be so
Mm.
that I am in the right place to meet the right person at the right time. And that's how I felt like it gave me a lot of confidence so that when I finally did meet, Ken, who I'm engaged to, and we have a baby, I was in the right headspace to really maneuver all of the things that came along the way, including some of the earlier stuff, like, our first phone call. I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, I really wanted kids and I decided to do this on my own. And, if that's not for you, I get it. But, that's where I am. Let me know.
Right. Well, we're going to get to that part because it's super interesting and exciting about how you got there. So one thing I just want to highlight from what you just said is that there comes a time where you're like, I'm the common denominator. And you're really smart. You have like an academic background, if I remember correctly,
Yep.
right? Yeah. So very like logical and like, realizing like maybe there might be something that I can't see or that I can't know from the perspective of myself. I can't see the tip of my nose. Was there one big thing that you learned about yourself that sort of was like, oh, now it's all making perfect sense? Did you have any of those ahas like as you went through that part?
I mean, there were a few of them along the way. I think I didn't always, I loved when you had us think about what were we really looking for and narrowing it down in terms of just even character traits, because we all do these things, right? Oh, he has to have, this degree or this, that, without really thinking about what is the quality of the person that I'm looking for and having that in my brain. It was so helpful to me when I went on dates to be able to really say, this is why this works for me or this doesn't. And, why am I getting upset about this? Because this person, while I thought they were cute or whatever, there were things about him that weren't matching what was important to me and who I was. And I think also thinking about how I viewed the world, like, especially
Mm.
when you're out there and you hear I mean, it happens all the time. After I took your course, I became so aware of all the negative chatter around me.
Yeah, right.
And like all the negative beliefs that people have about, oh, men are this or men are that. And I think allowing myself to be, well, men aren't one thing, men are just men, and allowing myself to be much more open, I think, and vulnerable. I remember you talked a
Mm.
lot about vulnerability, and that was something I'm good at once I'm in a relationship, and I don't think I was always as good at leading into it. And I think by allowing myself to be vulnerable early on, especially in my now fiance our relationship, I think it helped us to really develop so smoothly because he was someone who also wanted to be vulnerable, and then me being vulnerable early on, it just allowed us to develop so beautifully.
I love that. Okay, so let's talk about meeting Ken. So you did the inner work, and then we taught you sort of this like process. You went online and you met him, and you knew what you wanted. So what are some of the key points in that process with him that you were like, wait, this is a moment where I do something different?
Oh, there were a bunch of them. So early on, absolutely, there was one. So I kind of hinted at it before. So we had met on Hinge, which is just, they don't give you a lot of information on there. And so I didn't even know, I think he has kids. I don't know how old his kids are. And so, we start talking on the phone, and oh, by the way, he has teenagers, right? They're like 15 and 16, or I think they've been 14 and 15 at the time. And I'm sitting here listening to him being like, there is no way that this man in his mid to late 40s is going to want to start all over again with me because I wanted an infant, right?
Yeah.
And I think in my olden ways of thinking, I would have been very like self-deprecating and like immediately kind of wound up the conversation to like, this isn't for you. And instead I just felt very confident in like, this is who I am. Right. And so he asked me, oh, where are you at? And I was honest, and I was like, well, I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I've always wanted to have kids, and being in my mid 40s at this point, I didn't think it was something I could hold off on. And so I'm actually actively trying to get pregnant right now, but I really want to meet the right person. And I understand, your kids are off to college soon, that maybe this isn't for you. Right. But instead of making it anything negative, I just tried to be very positive and spin it as this is who I am. And, and I'm amazing. And I didn't say that, but, I was just feeling like I was feeling it, right? Like I'm a great person. And if this is something you want to get to know, then, hey, I'm here, but I'm just letting you know where I'm at because I don't want to hide anything.
And so what happened? Like, was he like, wow, I never thought about that, or I'm open, or how did you guys go from that conversation to like to a first date or a second date?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, you never know on the first date that this is the man you're going to end up marrying.
Right.
But I will say his response, I was like, who are you? I really started thinking, I'm like, my mom, who's been gone for 8 years now, I'm like, I think she sent him down from the sky for me. He literally said to me, I will never forget this. He's like, I wasn't planning on having more kids, but for me, finding the right person is the most important thing. And and relationships are about sharing dreams. And if your dream is to have kids and we're meant to be, then it will become my dream.
Oh my gosh. So this is a really great thing, because one thing that people do before they come to us is what I call, I met the most amazing guy syndrome, right? Where it's like, oh my God, this is it, right? Like, let me like get attached to this idea. And I know that you were able to stay in that place of calm and confidence and cautiously optimistic. So how did that go? Like, how did you stay in that space before you guys decided to be exclusive?
Yeah, honestly, I think along the way, it totally helped to keep my brain calm because I think when I met him, I was already out of the program, but we still had like the connections.
Yep.
And I remember some of the ladies were so helpful because there were a couple like times like we were texting a lot, right?
Yep.
But we hadn't talked in a bit. Like we'd had dates, but like I wanted him to call me, and I was feeling very anxious. And like, your old self could have written a million things, right? Like who the heck knows what I would have written. And I remember like telling the ladies like, oh my God, I really want him to call me, but I don't want to be that girl who's like, what the hell? Why aren't you calling me?
Right.
So I have to say, like, everyone helped me craft the most beautiful text that ended up being perfect because he kept texting me, but he just wasn't calling me. And so I finally ended up saying, I forget who it was that helped me, but I wrote something like, gosh, I love, because this was also part of what you do, right?
Yep.
To emphasize what are they doing, like help them see the positive that they're doing so that they feel good. So I said, gosh, I love that you're texting me so much. It makes me so happy. What I'd love even more is if I could hear your voice again, right?
Yay!
I didn't want to tell him.
That's like classic, awesome 5 keys text.
It was perfect. I didn't want to tell him to call me, but I'm like, I would love this, right? Like being vulnerable. And he replied perfectly to it. He replied right away, and he was like, well, you know what even be better was be seeing each other again.
I love it. That's so amazing. That's so great.
And it turns out, hindsight, like I think we talked about this, oh my God, like a year or two later, I can't even remember. But at some point, this came up like between us, we were talking. And I was trying to be like, just stepping back a little bit. I'd made so many mistakes in my life. I'm like, I'm going to let him, lead a little bit in the beginning. And I always responded to him, always, but I always let him start. And so he was feeling a little insecure, it turns out. He's like, gosh, I'm always like starting these conversations. And so he was actually feeling a little nervous. Like, does she want to go out with me again?
Right. And that's so important because we never know. We make up these stories and we don't know how men are experiencing us. So for you to give him the benefit of what he earned, to rule him in, before he ruled himself out, and to ask for what you need, those are like the reasons why you have a fiance and a baby.
Yeah, it all honestly, like, and that little piece there, I honestly, I don't know how the heck I would have handled that before, but I know there was a lot of back and forth with the ladies. I want to say it was Helen who helped me.
Yeah.
There was a lot of back and forth of like, this is what I want to write. Do you think this is okay? And they're like, well, it's good, but I would add this or try this. And then after a bunch of back and forth, I'm like, oh, this is perfect.
I love that. And we have this great community of women who graduate from the process, and they're in the process. Some of them have found their guy, and they're in the process still dating, and they're so encouraging. And that's what's so amazing about it, because then you have this community of people who are kind of talking the same language versus those people that you said you were aware of that were very negative and that may have told you a lot of other things to do that may not have served your purpose. Yeah, for sure. So tell us, so what happened? So give us the cliff notes of So you guys were dating, you decided to be exclusive. And I know let me ask you this. I know one of the bumps in the road that you had was that he had those teenagers.
Oh yeah.
And he had an ex-wife, and he had a lot of different things.
It's a thing, right? And especially when, and I was trying to get pregnant on my own, which is just crazy. And we even had these bizarre conversations in the first X number of months of dating of, which is really bizarre to have at that point in time. But, what if we work out and I'm using some random person's sperm? Right. How will he feel about that? Should we use his sperm? There's crazy conversations. And as it turned out, and he was just amazing, right? He was just the right guy at the right time. Here I am doing IVF shots, and I'm a month into a new relationship, and he was just totally cool with everything. And then it turned out that it didn't work for me, the IVF, but I wanted to adopt, and he was just there all the way through the whole process. And again, now we're engaged, and I officially adopted my son on my own just because of the timeline. But we're getting married next year, and once we're officially married, he will officially adopt my son, although he still considers himself dad. So he called he's dad, so he was referred to as dad. And his parents are grandparents, so it's all there. It's just the official paperwork at the end.
Oh my God, I love that. Okay, wait. So tell us though about what did you do? Because I remember early on-ish, the teenagers were not having it.
No, and it's been a challenge, and I think again, this is part of skills of recognizing that relationships are about we, not always me. And I think sometimes as women, we're trained to be like, well, they should be doing for me, right? I'm the prize, and you hear that a lot out there. Yep. But it's really about we, right? He does for me, I do for him. And so what ended up happening was, that they really did struggle. And he has 2 kids. One of them was a year older and a little bit more mature, and I think she's handling it okay. As really, I think been pretty decent about everything, and getting better over time. But the younger son has just been really, really struggling, and we reached a point where we realized, as much as we'd love to move things forward more quickly, there was just no way that we would be able to live together before his son went to college. It was just going to be too challenging, to the point where, maybe his son was going to be like, I don't want to live with dad half time.
Right.
and what and how would that make him feel, right? That his son isn't living with him half the time. So we had to come together and really see the long game of, we want to be together. This is the life we're sharing. We happen to meet at the point in time. Like if we had met 3 years earlier, it would have been different. The kids would have been younger.
Right.
But where they were, they just weren't in that headspace. And so we ended up saying, all right, well, it's not that crazy. We'll be dating 3 years before we get married. And so, he's with us half time with our son. And then we see him also on the weekends when he has his kids, but we just don't see him as frequently. And then next year, we already are actually renovating my house because he's going to move in here. And so then we'll get married and we'll live together. And fingers crossed, once everyone is in college, that they'll start to grow up and adjust and actually want to come and stay with us during holidays, because we would love that.
Oh, that's so great. And I think, again, this is a really important piece of like, how do you navigate the life from me to we? How do you realize that there is no perfect scenario? I think so many women who might listen to this would say, well, 6 months in or 8 months in, like I'm not spending X amount of time with him because of the kids, or the ex-wife is blah, blah, blah. And I see this because we help women stop sabotaging. There's this like little safety valve that says like, run, like maybe I'm going to get hurt. How did you stay grounded and centered and keep that long game view? What was the shift in you that allowed you to be able to do that?
I'm trying to think, because a lot of it is, I mean, honestly, I just kept saying to myself, I have never met anyone who's this perfect for me.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy, right? To have someone who really sees you, and is there for you and is actively trying to find solutions to make things work. That was huge for me. And so anytime anything kind of bubbled up, I really tried to acknowledge, oh, this is just kind of like, as you would say, like a gremlin or something like that, versus acknowledging, no, this actually is upsetting me, and recognizing when something's upsetting me, and then being able to calmly have a conversation about it instead of, flying off the handle, because I was able to really start recognizing, oh, this is just kind of me and my stuff. And even when it was me and my stuff, being able to be open and vulnerable, right? And say, like, this is what this feels like for me. And that still happens today even, right? There are things that come up that I know are perfectly reasonable, right? That if you have a congenial, people get along divorce, that there will be times where, the ex-wife is part of the picture, that are still feel icky. I have to kind of remember that, hey, I'm a grown up, and push down some of those, gremlin stuff, and remember, who you're with and what it is that you're going to be having for the long term.
I love that. What was it like for you? Can you describe the feeling when you got the call that your son was going to be born, and you were, like there's that dream that you talked about in 2018, and here you are going with this amazing man, and you're going to become a mom. What was that like for you, Naomi?
It was crazy. I mean, to be honest, adoption is a very different world, and I had no warning. So let's see, my son was born on a Wednesday, and I got the call on the same Wednesday. Hey, happy, healthy kid born. You want him?
Wow.
So your life changes in an instant. So it was a lot of like, this is exciting, and kind of freaked out at the same time. And Ken came with me when we flew down to pick him up. And it was surreal, I have to say, like having, him there and us being together and realizing that this is what I've always wanted. And that this is happening, was amazing. And it was, the timing of it all was so, we had planned to be engaged. We designed the ring together, so I knew it was happening, but we weren't actually engaged at that point. And then just like, I think he was only like a month old, my cousin babysat when we got engaged that night. And, when we finally did get engaged, and I'm like, I can't believe it, right? Like here I am, I'm engaged. I'm like, I kept staring at the ring in my finger. I'm like, oh my God, I'm engaged. And then like I have this son, and all of a sudden you know what occurred to me? I'm 47 years old. I'm like, gosh, I feel like a grown up. Like, how did this happen?
Oh, that's so amazing. It's so amazing. And it really just shows that it's this having this intention and continuing to allow it to unfold. And everything you've shared, you just keep going back to sort of like, big picture. What do I want? Who is this person? What's on my page? What do I need to say? How can I be vulnerable? Right. And then one day at a time, you wake up and you're like, wow, I have the family that I wanted.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And I think even, as you go through it, right, remembering, I think that vulnerability is such a huge piece that has helped us in so many little ways. We're really great for each other. It's amazing how well we fit. But even perfect people who fit perfectly well together, no one's perfect, right?
Exactly.
You're
Yes.
gonna have a disagreement.
Yep.
And I was just having a bad day. I think it was like, I don't even know how many weeks ago at this point. It was funny. I brought it up to Ken like a little bit ago, and he's like, "Oh, we had a fight. I don't remember."
I love that.
But it was actually like it like was awful because like we never ever fight, right? Like it's just not who we are. We have calm, cool conversations, and I was just not having a good day. I was stressing because of the baby and this and that.
Yeah.
And I was like not having a good moment, and I lost it, and then he lost it right back at me. And at some point I had to take a deep breath, and I'm sure he would have as well, but I happened to do it first. I took a deep breath. I went over to him, I gave him a hug, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to fight with you.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is like, let's figure out what it is, and like, how do we, and even early on, we've developed these cute little, like, I feel like we should put it on a wall somewhere. We have these little relationship rules, and they honestly, they're not rules, but they're like
Right.
things that we follow, right? That we say, for example, never go to bed mad, right?
Hmm.
And I've had to be vulnerable sometimes. And remember, this is the rule we made because I was upset one night and I'm lying in bed and we're not snuggling like we normally do. And I was like, Naomi, this is your relationship rule. You got to take a deep breath right now. Because, this is if you don't, because I don't know, we always felt like, um, how he's divorced clearly. I've had long relationships that failed and we didn't want to screw this up.
Yep.
So I took a deep breath because I was the one who was a little upset, and I rolled over and I was like, you know what, I love you, I'm gonna let this go right now. And I think every day having that intention that this relationship is so important, and if it means that I have to take a deep breath sometimes and swallow my pride, then that's what it is.
And that's really a beautiful thing. And to be with that partner who agrees with that, who wants that same thing, because it's so important, right? You have shared mutual goals, which
Yes.
is what he said, like what on your first phone conversation?
He did, and I remember my friend was like, "Oh my God, that is such a bunch of crock or something." But he, I mean, I give him a lot of credit, and again, like negative beliefs and these rules, right? Like a lot of people would have told me back in the day, "Oh, you don't want to date this man," right? Like
Mm.
he just started dating, like he'd been divorced, or actually he was officially still separated. They'd signed the papers. They were waiting like whatever the X number of
Yep.
days is for it to be official. So they've been separated for like 7 years. It'd been a long time, but still, you're dating a separated man. Uh-oh, right?
Yep.
And it's not officially, even though the papers are signed, things can go wrong. And what? He's only the fourth person that he's dated. You're the fourth person. He's not ready yet, right? Meanwhile, it turns out that when we really talked about it, he took a long time. The reason he hadn't dated was because he had taken like 5 or 6 years to really do deep thought. I mean, he did like his like personal mail version of your program
Yep.
without actually hiring someone. He had
Yep.
like a PowerPoint slide of everything he wanted and like things he didn't want, and like he had done a lot of deep work. And it was a good fit for me.
I love that. So if you wanted to sort of share with anyone who's listening that is struggling right now to find a happy, healthy relationship, and or their dream feels very far away, what would you say to them?
I would say, I mean, the biggest thing, especially based on what I see with my friends, is just don't make assumptions, right? I think so many people jump to conclusions about, oh, this man in that situation, because every person is an individual, and maybe you're missing out on like the guy, right? If you just categorize them as, well, they're in this box. And then, having an open mind about people and what they're able to be, but also not making excuses. I find, especially in my history, and I've seen so many of my friends do this too, that we want the dream so badly that we're trying to make someone that they're not. And really seeing people for who they are and being brave enough to let ourselves be alone so that the right person is going to come into us at the right time.
I love that. And if you were going to sort of put into like a couple of sentences or words about what it is that you took away from your experience in the 5 keys and being part of our community, what is that?
I took away, I think, a greater sense of who I am and really a lot of clarity about what it is I really wanted, and being so clear about it that I was able to, I think, easily see through some of the haze to zoom in on what I wanted, but also not letting myself, and it was hard sometimes, but not letting myself get upset if something didn't work out, and also putting myself into more situations that would allow me to meet someone. As it turned out, hey, I met Ken on an app, right?
Right.
And that was great. But I also had really tried to practice. I remember you told us practice. So I remember this distinctly. Like one time I practiced. I'm like, okay, Marni says to practice. So I brought myself out. This is before COVID and all that. But I went out to a bar and I'm like, I'm going to watch the Celtics game and I'm going to, eat at the bar and I'm going to strike up a random conversation with some guy, even if I'm not interested in him, just so that I can practice.
I love that. And that is why I said, we're like, do this. Naomi's like, okay, do this. Okay. Right. And learning and growing throughout the entire process, which you are so clearly still doing. And I am so happy for you. And your son is such a lucky little dude to have such great parents. And I just wish you both the best of luck. And thank you so much for sharing your story.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Ladies, wherever you are in your life, don't give up on your damn dream. Just life check yourself and maybe we can help you out. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWD VIP. That's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com, and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to DWDVIP.com. I'm Marni Batista, and let's talk soon.